Thank you so much for your time today. The topic of our panel is we're going to talk a little bit about the characteristics of organizations that handle disruption well. And actually, I had the privilege of talking to the speakers here, and I felt like we could do a great white paper at the end of this meeting. And I also realized we are the last panel between cocktails, so we should get going. What we are really going to talk about is like the organizations that actually handle disruptions well. What are some of the characteristics? How are they doing it? What are the best practices? And I was genuinely thrilled when I spoke to each one of you. I was genuinely thrilled that each one of you have done such great work to handle disruption in a very unique manner. I'll start with JC. All this morning you would have heard about tech mafia, startup mindset, and all that. And JC actually brought up an interesting point where it's not perhaps more about the mindset, it's more about the execution strength and the execution capacity. And I found that very fascinating. JC, quick introduction. He's a SVP of Lithium Technologies and SVP of HR. And I found that aspect extremely interesting. I'll let JC actually start with that, and we have fascinating discussion, folks, and I'm super thrilled to be here. So perhaps you can start with that.
So there's definitely a mindset that you have to, in my view, I mean, you do have to pay attention to that. The part that I'm really trying to figure out is, how do you match the speed at which things happen with the tools that we traditionally have used inside of HR to manage the people programs? And I'll tell you, it's probably the hardest thing to do. I mean, the HCM space today, I mean, there's so many different players out there right now. And everyone thinks they can kind of do it all. So, for us, it's matching the speed of the business with what we deliver and operationalize from a people perspective. And as a 400 or so person company that's global, we've got to move very quickly. I mean, it's also the business that we're in. So Lithium is not a battery company. So let me just clarify that. It's a social collaboration company. So what we do is we run online communities for companies to connect with their customers. And the reason we do that is because in the way that people think today and how quickly they want their information yesterday, we believe that that's a key differentiator for companies out there. And when we feel the same way around the HR stuff inside of Lithium, you got to get out there pretty quickly. Otherwise, people are going to move on without you. So.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure we will come back to more of JC's thoughts. Sakar, you mentioned that one of the key aspects that companies who handle disruption well are the companies that focus more on the cultural aspects. The way you described about the processes around that was very fascinating. Sakar Anand, he is Senior Vice President of Product Operations and also Human Resources at CA Technologies. So thank you for being here, and I would really like your opinion on what makes companies' culture as a key asset to battle disruption. So.
Sure. Thank you so much. First of all, thanks for inviting me for this panel. And yes, as we were having a discussion, and I said, it's the culture of an organization which determines how well-positioned a company is to handle disruption. And you said culture is broad. So, what I wanted to talk about was especially the processes in the organization. Any organization's processes are a reflection of the culture that they follow. And, when I say processes, I mean, the processes with which the entire ecosystem of an organization deals with its employees. It could be how you accelerate their performance. It could be how you hire people. It could be how you provide them growth opportunities. It could be how you manage your projects. So, to give you an example, in most of the forward-looking organizations, and in no means to the ones who have not made this change, but companies are moving away from performance ratings. And the thought process around that was that when a manager goes and talks to an employee and they give a performance rating, the employee's brain just stops there. And what keeps ringing in the employee's head is the rating. And companies are what they're doing now is that we would not have ratings, and we would rather have a manager go and talk to the employee more frequently.
Actually, if I may interrupt 1 minute, I want to pay more attention to that performance acceleration component. So we would go around hearing on that one piece. So I want to reserve that. It's a very, very interesting soundbite. It's a really, really hot topic. I think there was one question from somebody here about that. So I want to come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
I'll talk about maybe some other aspects of it. So, and also with regards to how you hire your employees, there were days when the company would actually put an ad in the newspaper, or would actually look at mechanisms in which prospective employees would reach out to them. Rather, what's happening in companies today is that senior executives in the companies are going and blogging on sites or chat channels where employees or such talent already resides. And so they are going in the middle of the talent. They are trying to now be within that talent and talk to them, and then figure out ways on who are the ones with which we have the mindset or who have the right technical skills. There are companies which have been in specific locations for ages, but have now decided to shift their headquarters so that they can be in the middle where the talent is. Companies now do project planning, and to the extent that when the project planning is happening, there are 3 or 4 customers sitting in that room along with the developers doing project planning. So these are the processes with which how nimble, how agile you are, and how flexible you are to make changes on the fly. So that you can handle disruption, which is happening both within the organization and outside the organization.
Folks, if you're not taking notes, I seriously suggest you do, because a lot of tactical steps are coming out. And actually, I was telling the panel, like, we could do a great white paper out of this, and we will. Tony, you and I go long way back, and you always have a point of view to say something a little bit unique and different and slightly controversial. One of the things you said is like, it's companies may say like, do not be afraid of failure, but it is success that actually breeds more success, and that's a key aspect of guarding yourself against disruption. So, quick introduction: Tony DeBlau, HR director. Let me see where you are now, Aptus, and he's been everywhere in the Valley. So I just wanted to thank you for being here and give your slightly controversial thought.
Well, as somebody who's always been between the executive layer and the trenches, I'm always sensitive to both sides, right? You have to meet people where they're at. What's different now is that the technology component and the people component has radically changed. So from an HR perspective, you can't sit on your laurels that, I have the best system or the best process, or some consultant came in and gave me this great thing and I roll it out. That's the traditional method. What you find is that when you marry yourself to that, within 30 to 90 days, it'll be disrupted. Disrupted by your people hating it, or your business has changed. Your environment has changed. So it creates a just-in-time nimbleness and flexibility that, to me, I haven't seen in quite a long time. And how well you adapt to that is going to make the difference between creating an organization and a talent model that's going to adapt to disruption versus one that's going to be consumed by it. So I'm always looking at ways to, as we're starting to kind of hint around, getting closer to the customer, but also getting better at the conversations that make the difference, that drive the value, that give people the trust and the insight to deal with whatever the company is throwing at them, whether it's internally based or externally based. So I'm always sensitive to, I know where we need to go. I know what we need people to be thinking about. Again, the heart and mind connection, but I want to do it in a way that's not that traditional feeling that obviously HR departments sometimes, HR asked us to do this, HR told us to do this. That model's pretty much, in my opinion, is dead. So you have to go from a place that's more connected to the business and its people.
Thank you, Tony. Rachel Biddy, she's Chief People Officer at JobWhite. When we were debriefing, you kind of mentioned that the best way to guard against disruption is to have diverse minds working on that problem. I found that topic, that answer so thought-provoking and as well as inspiring, because to me, a diversity is a problem that the Silicon Valley is trying to solve for the last 5+ years very actively, and disruption is another problem they are trying to guard against. Maybe there is a solution here that you are the magic bullet somehow. So perhaps you could talk about why you believe that, and maybe inspire us with a case study there. So.
I hope I have a magic bullet. We'll find out or not. I think we all struggle with this, and we all think about it on a constant basis. I guess I would just use a real case that we're in right now. We are in the HR software base. It is very competitive. We actually have 2 of our customers with me here, which is always a delight. But the reality is that JobVite has moved from having small customers to more mid-size and enterprise-type customers. LinkedIn was one of our original customers that grew with us. But as we've started to move up to that, we've struggled with integrations. And one of our competitions they're a little bit ahead of us in this space. So you talk about those external factors that can disrupt, which drives you internally needing to be, whether it's on the offensive or on the defensive, you've got to move quickly. And so we have a customer council that we utilize 3 times a year. We get together with them, and they give us lots of advice and guidance. What spawned out of this was actually taking an internal integrations team that had diversity perspectives across the different departments, and we actually wanted to mirror that with different perspectives from our customers. So we also went to our partner. We have a partner that has about 55 folks for us in India, and we equally wanted to leverage them. So we actually ended up creating a group that has very different departments, very different perspectives in how they look at this problem. They're all over different time zones. Talk about, there's gender diversity, there's different size of company diversity, and it's just really been magical to watch what can come out of that. It does take creating a lot of communication, the ability to listen, to be open to ideas, and we're just seeing things that we thought we wouldn't be able to tackle are being tackled in a really powerful way with our customers. And that's where I fundamentally believe this in my gut, I always have, that different perspectives can really end up with better solutions. But it's great to kind of see that happening from an internal and an external perspective, as the fact that we have a competition that's doing something better than we are right now, and we're trying to catch up really fast to be able to kind of beat them at that. And I'm excited about where we're going to be going in the next quarter with it.
That's really incredible. So the diversity is really the diverse, not only in the gender and ethnicity, it's like diversity of thoughts, diversity of schools, diversity of geography. That's really, really powerful. Changing slightly gears here, one of the key points that came out of all the keynotes, fabulous keynotes from Pari, Frank, everybody, that talent plays a key part in guarding against disruption. So there is no, there is no double questioning that. It's ultimately, especially for tech companies or even legacy companies, people seem to be the single most asset for guarding against disruption. If so, one of the million-dollar question that's there in every executive's mind is, how do we appraise such talent? Like, what is the right performance management process? Is rating still the way to go? Is it not? The pendulum swings every 2 years, this side and that side. JC, I would start with you. What is your opinion about performance? Maybe not even performance management. This whole thing called rating. Rating employees or rating talent.
I'll probably go against the popular answer on this. We find that part of our jobs is to ensure that brand new leaders get the opportunity to really understand how to develop talent in their organization. And some of the tools that we've used as a profession for a long time certainly have some merit to them, and they're helpful. They're helpful in being able to ground people on how you look at talent across the organization, whether you're using a 9-box for your high potential discussions, or whether you're forcing weekly discussions to have to happen between manager and employee. I think that it's important to measure what it is. I would just have a tough time telling a brand new manager that, we have at it, figure out kind of where you fall into this really gray area. I think that there's still a spot where we can use ratings at least at Lithium, we can use ratings appropriately. And there's nuances to it, right? It's not a stack ranking exercise. I mean, the way that we do it is it's more of a suggested distribution, and a lot of times that curve moves to the right. When you're a small company, probably okay to have a little bit of that, because the competition, especially in San Francisco, is so fierce. It's kind of, you have to also deal with the reality, right? The one thing, though, that we do a lot is we measure it. So, we pay bonuses. We used to do it quarterly, but we do it twice a year now. And we actually find that about 60% of all of our employees get something other than 100%, right? And that is where we've kind of taught managers what their appropriate ranges might be for the efforts that each employee is putting forth based on what gets funded from a bonus perspective. And we let them make those decisions. We think that's pretty important. So regardless of I know that at least 6 out of 10 people are having to have a discussion, whether it's above or below, just their target bonus. So that's kind of how we've managed it. There's no kind of real secret to it. We have not made the leap to going no ratings and just having discussions. So,
Sakar, this is the point I interrupted you, so I'll give back to you on the same
Sure.
point.
So we are a company which has eliminated ratings, and so I would like to clarify that we've just eliminated ratings. We have not eliminated performance, or paying employees for performance, or promoting employees for performance, or celebrating performance in the organization. And when I say that we have eliminated ratings, and that was the point I was trying to make, was that we figured that when you got an employee into a discussion with a manager, the only thing the employee's mind was wrapped around was, what was my rating? What the manager said before that, or what the manager said after that, never made a sense to the employee. 3 out of 5, and that 3 would keep ringing in the employee's head for the next half an hour that the person was sitting with the manager. Now, if you take the rating away, I still tell the employee the same thing that I would have told the employee when I was giving him or her a rating 3, would now stick with the employee. It's not been an easy leap, like as JC said, it's not been an easy, I wouldn't say that it's been a leap already. We're taking small steps, because a lot of our downstream systems were also based on a very objective calculation of what the bonus payment was because of the rating. We would bring people in a room to discuss promotion, and we would say what the employee's rating was. We are trying to change our systems and processes around it. We ensure that our managers talk to our employees every 6 weeks. The discussion is documented. So definitely there is more work for the manager, but it is now documented in the system, wherein if I'm inheriting a team, I have those documents to go through. And I can read it in much more, there's a lot more context just beyond number on the alphabet out there. Yeah, it's more work for me if I'm a manager, but there's a context to it as to how a person's performance has been appraised. And what we have found with this change is that the onus still lies with the manager, but the discussion now becomes more forward-looking. Instead of dwelling more on what a person did last quarter, we dwell more on what a person is supposed to do in the coming quarter, and what are the learnings that you can take from the prior quarter to make sure that you achieve more in the next quarter.
Tony, what's your point of view on that?
Similar model. So, Aptus is a company that still considers itself a startup, even though it's 1,200 people now. So it's a mid-sized private company, arguably. So when you're growing that fast, when you hyper growth, rocket ship, all of those things, your infrastructure kind of goes by the wayside, right? So there's been an opportunity, because I'm very anti-ratings. I've done that, force ranking, all that stuff. So I've always been intrigued with, again, getting back to the trenches. What does it actually look like to tell somebody, I can't pull a report for you that normalizes all your people? You're going to have to go through 50 forms or whatever your span of control is, and go through all these people and glean, and hopefully they wrote it well, and glean from that, your entire team. So at least what I've found and what we're doing, and agree, it's baby steps, it's incremental, right? And things are moving so fast. So, we have the challenge of implementing a program, and then 200 more heads are joining. So you're trying to constantly, be, again, that nimbleness and flexibility. What is the objective, right? We're talking about disruption. I want to be able to create insulation around a talent pool that, A, we spent a lot of time and money getting in there, and I don't want them leaving. So outside of pay, I got to give a lot of them, and more than half our companies under 30. So I need to be able to give something, and you know what that something is? It's that conversation. That is fast becoming one of the #1 things that we look at, sort of our top 3 areas of like, what do I want working here? It's, I want the recognition. I want the value. I want to know I'm doing the right things for the right people at the right time. That's not going to come from a 3 out of 5. That's going to come from a conversation. So knowing that I'm trying to solve for that, because that's goodness, that's richness, I also have to be sensitive to the manager who has potentially a team of 50 people. So we're modifying the program so that you're answering questions. Some of those are based on past performance. A lot of it is based on future, right? That's coupled with some other tools we look at in the traditional key talent. I'm not a huge fan of the 9-box either, but sometimes it just ends up going there again. But together, what I want to do, getting back to the hearts and minds thing, is I don't want you to look at HR as the crutch. I want you to feel enabled to have the right conversation when you need to have it, right? And that it's formalized enough that we check off all the compliance stuff that we worry about, but back to the problem of creating that insulation that makes us a better team overall.
Rachel, what is your...
Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, I've worked in very large structured companies where we had a lot of rigor and we had a lot of components of this. I've also worked in some much smaller companies where absolutely had nothing, right? And I actually stepped into that with this job. Had never had a head of HR for JobVite, never done performance reviews, never had goals, nothing. And so my personal perspective is it really depends. And I know that my colleagues hate when I give that answer, but the reality is like, what is it you're trying to do, right? And I can say at JobVite, we're at the early stages of this journey, and believe it or not. But we really went back to the leadership team and my CEO and said, what do we want to do? And it came down to 2 things. We wanted to have accountability because we were growing a ton, we were hiring a ton of people, but we also wanted to make sure that we continued to have a high standard in what performance we were expecting of people. So an accountability to each other, accountability to people's expectations, as well as growth, because we know we're only going to grow as fast as we can grow our own talent. So those were the 2 fundamental components that we hinged on. Now, at the same time, you have to understand, I have a pretty green leadership team in some cases, right? I don't have leaders who've done 9 blockers. I have brand new people managers. And so we really needed to be thoughtful about, let's do this in baby steps. And so this was the first year. We just did a performance rating. We actually designed it. We went out to the leaders. We went out to the employees. We had them build it with us so they could own it. They actually got to pick the words. They got to pick the definitions. Like, that was kind of fun. Like, we had stuff all over sticky whiteboards. And they started to own it, which is what we wanted. Now, mind you, where we're going is we want to go future looking. Like exactly what you guys are talking about, because we know that that's the richness of where we're going. But it was also like, I needed to be really thoughtful about the capabilities of the leaders that I had. And the biggest thing we're focusing on with my team is we're really focusing on building those leaders' capabilities, because the stronger our leaders are to have really thoughtful, rich conversations, I really believe you need less structure. So we decided to build some structure. As our leaders continue to grow, we'll probably pull back on a bit more of that, and it won't be as needed. It's all in service to what are you trying to accomplish.
Audience, I know a lot of you are soul searching on this topic. We can take one question on this specific topic. If you can make it a little bit more detailed, that's more helpful. Yeah. Can we get the mic here?
Maybe a question for Rachel. You talked about developing leaders, right? Developing your leaders' capability. What are some of the things that you're doing to help them along that journey?
So honestly, my team has actually been building different modules. Of literally, one of them is as basic as, Management 101. How do you construct a really great one-on-one with your employees? We've identified that we've got some managers that aren't even really doing one-on-ones, right? And really trying to leverage what is it employees are wanting, and having managers really tell us and be vulnerable with us, like what are they struggling with, right? So we're doing as basic as that, as well as how do you have really difficult conversations. We happen to have a culture that is very collaborative, it's very positive, but the Achilles heel in this is I've got even executives that have a hard time having a difficult conversation. right? And that takes courage, that takes vulnerability. And so we're doing a spectrum of different things. And we're doing everything from, yes, we've got some actual materials that we're developing and sharing, but we also just have leaders sharing with each other, because they really learn a lot when they get to leverage each other and actually role play. And so we've been mixing it up quite a bit. And I have a little bit of a spectrum of folks who really need to know how to do one-on-ones. And then I have folks that are really talented, and we're leveraging them to teach their other managers as well. So. And you're not alone if you have this, I think at first I was like, am I alone? Like, no, none of us are alone. So.
Yeah, I would definitely say not alone, because it's similar. We again, over 50% are under 30. So a lot of these folks are graduating into management roles and having teams for the first time. So you have to throw away all the convention of the assumption. So a couple of quick things. We put clinics together. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a quick, so it's just in time. We can serve lunch, which is always nice. We can do a GoToWebinar, so we can get the global piece of it, right? I don't need to wait on anything. I can just do it, right? And we can talk about what are the specific needs that you have. The other thing is we're building enablement paths. So there's two ways that I'm approaching it. One is, yes, I'd love to buy a solution that helps with the e-learning part of it, but then I start to thinking, I still have to go and proctor all of the content. So the problem with things like Udemy and Audacity, these are great platforms, but I might find like a coaching module, like the first two of the series, the rest suck. So now I have to go and find, well, who else can gravitate onto that, right? So I'm building up my own paths and putting it in our learning management system. So the combination of the face-to-face, let's talk about what you're dealing with against what we just threw upon you. And secondly, that's always on demand, but vetted, not just here it is, and this big library of stuff is making a big difference. Again, getting back to, as we're talking about, what is your objective? What am I trying to bring you over to where we're trying to be? So there's a lot of just-in-time stuff you can do tools-wise.
If I may add, as both of them said, it's a change, it's a journey that we are on. We call these discussions pulse conversations. And we send our employees every 6 weeks a survey with just 2 questions. I had my pulse conversation, quality of my pulse conversation was, and that's a rating scale. So each employee comments on that, so we know what is the level of pulse conversation and the quality of pulse conversation that is happening across the groups.
Thank you so much. That was super helpful. Changing gears a little bit, how do you, connecting it back to the keynotes this morning, disruption is handled better by sort of champions within the team or champion superstars within the organization. Some call it the visionaries, thought leaders, or some say that is pockets of brilliance here and there. How do you handle that? Actually, it's a great thing to have some pockets of brilliance, but at the same time, it can also become a hurdle if they are not integrated well, going back to your cultural point, if they are not integrated well within the organization so that it is kind of empowering the full organization. So I see that a lot of organizations struggle in that aspect to manage these really high super performers. And understanding that will be super helpful for this group, simply because guarding against disruption is not just creating some isolated set of high performers, right? So the organization itself have to operate it in an empowered model. Perhaps I'll begin with you, JC, in how to make it institutionalize it. I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question. Where do I start? I think that celebrating really talented work, when people can do it in alignment with the company's values, one of them being around teamwork, makes it that much more special. So we point it back a lot, not just on what you accomplished, but how you did it. And are you leaving a trail of blood behind you after each project? That's never any fun to go clean up. And after a while, it just kind of runs out of steam, and no one wants to work with said people, right? On the other hand, I do believe that in as competitive a market that we're in, it's okay to treat your top talent unfairly. I mean, it is a I don't know about you guys, but we're right smack in the middle of San Francisco, and it seems like there's a startup popping up every single day, and people throwing gobs and gobs of money at folks. And when we're a company of 400 people, and about 220 of those in the city, like we've got to make sure that we're taking care of top talent. So I think there's two sides to it. It never works well. I mean, I think that the culture that we've got, and I'm sure it's the same at your companies as well, is that it doesn't get tolerated from the CEO, the board, on down. Like we have a pretty good, I feel pretty lucky, a pretty good culture of respect for one another. So we don't worry about it too much.
So, Vijay, I want to make sure that I got your question correct. What are you talking about? How do you take pockets of brilliance and make sure that that becomes the way the organization works, or how do you treat pockets of brilliance?
Both, actually, because if you do not get treating the pockets of brilliance right, that can create some noise elsewhere. At the same time, you want to encourage pockets of brilliance because that may be your key weapon to handle against disruption. So, so it's a very interesting dynamic there. So yeah, I would like to get your perspective on both.
So again, because I talked about culture, I'll take it back to that point about, we have our company core values. And, what are values? Values are a set of behaviors, right, that employees demonstrate. And, what our CEO does a town hall every quarter. And what he does is that he would pick up each core value. We've got 4 core values, and he picks up a reward or a recognition around each core value, and he would pick up 3 instances where an employee anywhere in the world demonstrated behaviors which were in line with our core values. And not only the behaviors, but also the results associated with those behaviors. So I did X, but it resulted in Y and Z. It could be customer satisfaction. It could be something within the organization. So just think about it, 4 core values, 3 people around each core value. So he picks up 12 people every quarter to talk about them. So we kind of celebrate those pockets of brilliance.
Encourage it.
We encourage it. And if the CEO is doing it in front of all employees, where he puts the person's name and he talks about what the person did and what were the results that the person's efforts drove for the company, it goes a long way.
Tony?
Yeah, so my big thing is always, do you know who people are doing what? And sometimes that's hard because those pockets are the ones whose names seem to come up all the time. And that's fine, right? They're very talented. You need to protect them. But then I'm privy, because of the meetings that I have, I can go further down to the organization. I'm finding that Joe is this great programmer doing some great things. Like the panel before was talking about innovation. Innovation, to me, a lot of times people get, it's this big thing. It's like, this person just created a simple process that alleviated, 2 to 5 man hours a week for somebody. That's innovation. That is a beginning of a thinking, of a process. How do I grow that seed into something, right? So based on the values, very similar, created an initiative called One Team. I know it sounds fairly generic, but it was intended that way, simplistic. And that was to share these stories of both customer success, but specifically how those teams came together to work together to create that success, but also what does it mean to be an employee at the company. So we created the vehicles to share it and let it go. And so hashtags and social, because we have Chatter and Salesforce. So all this stuff was going around. We ended up creating a wall of pictures, the face, the recognition, what did you do? And everybody globally could see that. And now it's a thing. It's a stickiness. It's part of our material. It's on our website. It's grown. It's ballooned into this. This is who we are. So there is a cultural element, right? But to me, it's really that, give the tools. People feel like, hey, now I'm going to connect with somebody I would have never have known was working on this or had this great story. I can give kudos and starts to bubble up, and that behavior that you want is rewarded.
So I would echo a lot of what you guys have talked about, which is great. I do think that you do need to look at your pockets of brilliance and put gasoline on them, right? The reality is that when you have it, you need to I always want to be fair and equitable with employees at the end of the day, but you're going to have your spectrum where you are going to over-reward, or you're going to go above and beyond because that talent is so critical to the strength of the company and where it's been. We just did a job seeker survey that was a little bit shocking to me, given that we are all feeling a little bit of, tech isn't quite getting as much funding in the last 3 or 4 months, right? I think for the first time we don't have somebody going to IPO in like 10 years. In Silicon Valley, Wall Street's kind of getting tired of us out here, right? But still, like 3/4 of job seekers are willing to listen to opportunities. So we are constantly dealing with 3/4 of our population as potentially looking, they're open, right? And we're trying to retain that talent. And so I really feel strongly about that. Like, I think you have to do that. The only other point that I would call out is it's also what do you do with your folks that aren't brilliant is as equally important. And so I'll be candid, I walked into the company and I looked at 4 people and I went, oh, they gotta go. And it's what you do to really take a look at your folks that are taking away from that culture that you're trying to create as well. You've got to address it. And you've got to have really candid conversations with your leaders about if somebody's not matching those values, if they're in particularly a leadership role, how do you go about that? Because it's not always easy, right? Because you're worried about a domino effect or you're worried about what it could be. But I really firmly believe you've got to address all of those.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions to the panel before I go to the next theme? Can you give the mic? Oh, Eric.
Here you go. Eric's known by his name.
This is not directed at Rachel. We know each other from a long time ago. Quick question. You've all talked about individual performance, but it seems to me the differentiator is team performance. So are any of you doing anything around the recognition and the codification of team performance? There was a little bit about the highlighting of the success, but is it codified by the way you pay?
So we do it on rewards and recognition. So I think you guys mentioned that sometimes you'll have rewards. We have employee of the quarter. Every all hands, we do kind of a cheers for peers. It's a peer perspective. We've introduced actually not just about individuals, but also teams that get recognized. And so that's one way that we do that. So.
We follow agile development process, so we have sprints that we highlight. We highlight a specific sprint and what did the team, what did particular sprint achieve, and what was done and what is the work in progress. So highlighting the sprints is our way of recognizing teams.
One of the things that's new that we had done, I mean, we do the same in our non-sales roles, is what you guys have said. But one of the things that we've instituted is a team bonus for some key deals on the sales side. So we let the account executive actually take a bucket of money and figure out who on their team gets the opportunity to receive part of that bonus. And so we've extended it out to the sales team because there's a theme around lithium that we don't do a ton of deals for a company our size, and so it really does take a village when we close one of these deals, and it's nice. We get a chance to have an account manager or an account executive who's leaned on their order ops folks, the accountants on the team, and the product manager that went out, took a flight out late night and spent the weekend out in Europe or something. So it's one of the things that we're trying to do throughout the rest of the organization too.
So I'll just say on the comp structure side, not so much. The difference that we're moving towards, that we're exploring, is experiential reward. So there's Blue Board. Some of you may have heard of what that is. Now, typically that's to try to not do spot bonuses all the time. And for the millennial crowd, the experience means a lot more. So we're taking a look at that and then moving it toward what is the team experience. So the great news is, with our One Team initiative, we're actually able to chronicle the story. So it's already gotten, we do special kudos and executive handwritten notes and all that, that piece of it. But now we're moving it towards, well, hey, how about rewarding that team with an experience? Could be a cooking class. It could be trip to Napa, something like that. That's when we talk about experience. And that's starting to work like really, really well, because now what we're starting to hear, it's very early, but we're starting to hear people want to work again with this person, and they can specifically state why. And you know what? Those are all the skills that work very brilliantly for me and what I'm trying to do in my schemes and plans with career pathing and everything else, to build more pockets of brilliance, right? So we're going a different direction and looking at the experience versus pay structure.
I know we are at time, but I'm going to extend this 2 more minutes because it's a very important point that I was talking to Rachel. And really, if connecting back to the keynote, one of the important things to guard against disruption is to let the customers stay very connected to the employees. And you had explained some customer immersion programs. If you can briefly talk about that. I know keeping you guys from cocktails, but this is a key component. I was very thrilled to hear this, so perhaps we could.
It better be good, right? If I'm in between you and a cocktail. So I actually have the inevitable job with the fact that my peers are our customers. And so I have a dual part of my job where I get to run the HR, but I also get to be very connected with prospects and deals. And so one of the things that we've been doing is we've been really, we have a customer council. But really being able to bring that into the organization much more. And so my team of recruiters, for example, have mostly just been heads down hiring because they've been so busy at that. And we've really been trying to give them a little more slack in their schedule so that they can actually go out to prospects with some of our sales folks. And then they can also go, and they're actually working with our UX design folks on a new initiative that we have coming out from a product perspective, where they're going with them to the customers to get the feedback. And so really taking my team from an HR perspective and having them get out there with customers and get connected and to bring that back and having them be additional spokespeople, because we just have that opportunity where we get to be connected. And so we're really trying a lot, and sometimes it's hard to do when you're global. So really it's hard to think about, you can video things, you can share it, right? You can put leaders, have people go do an experience and come back and share what it was like to be in that customer experience and go walk in their shoes for the day. And so we're really trying to not just have our customer success organization do that, but also all of our organizations get out there, go talk to customers, have them have that liberty, but then making sure they bring it back. Right, and that they share it with the broader team of the organization. So kind of holding an accountability of, we want you out there with customers, but we want you to bring it back so you can teach and share. And having my recruiters who are, they use the product every day, right? They're some of our power users, so they're helping improve the product. They're helping engage with prospects and with customers. So
I find that extremely fascinating. Right?
And real quick, as somebody who went through that as a customer, it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at the ideas of the company and where they're trying to take the platform and solving a need, but to have that open discussion, I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. JC, you had some points on customer immersion as well. So,
yeah, one of the strategies that we've got in this fiscal year is to create customer councils as well, similar to what the others are doing. And so we invite customers to come chat with us about their business problems that they're trying to solve. But we also have very broad teams across the company that help kind of firefight any customer issues that we've got. So what we're trying to do this upcoming year is that every customer will have an executive sponsor that they can pick up the phone and call, and it doesn't always need to be our CTO or head of product management or customer support or the rest, but we've got pods of kind of customer councils that sit inside of Lithium, starting off with our biggest accounts right now. So it's one of the ways that we're trying to connect ourselves to what our customers are doing. I just think that it's, when people see that across the company, it is very powerful. Then they know exactly, boy, if I just kind of fix this particular part of the code, I know the problem that is exactly trying to go fix. And so for a while there, I think Lithium had gotten too far away from understanding the problems that our customers were trying to solve. So.
Awesome. To close, just a quick yes or no response from the elite panelists. Do you believe you will be disrupted out of business in the next 2 years? Yes or no? Just go around and say.
Start over there.
No, but it's competitive in our space. I actually like it. I like that we have, when I was looking to take this job, a lot of my colleagues were like, are you sure, Rachel? Like, there's a lot of competition in our space. And I actually really like it. We kind of have I have a CEO that loves to negotiate and loves to win. And so we've really rallied around the fact that we have to keep innovating and we have to be on the offensive and the defensive. But, oh yeah, no,
awesome.
We'll be around.
Tony?
No. I mean, we're in one of these spaces that's emerging, and that we're fortunate to be in a leadership quadrant in that way. And I think I'm looking forward, to all the stuff that we're doing now. Some of these baby steps, incremental things. If we're doing it right, it blossoms to to where we intended. So I'm positive on that.
Awesome. Carl?
No. If at all, we'll disrupt. We'll create disruption.
Yeah, I got to execute. I mean, it's not going to be easy forging a new market, trying to get customers to sign on the line, but we have to go execute. Feel like we've got the right plan in place, so it's kind of in our hands.
Thank you so much. I felt we really got some tactical action items as to how do you guard against disruption and what are the incremental steps we need to take. I have 10 more points to go through. I could talk all evening, but I don't want to be the guy who stops you from having nice drinks. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to have been here and really, really enjoyed the preparation and as well as the execution. So.